Okay, everybody should be seeing their screen now with the presentation, Optimizing Medicaid for Health and Wellness, Real Life Success Stories. We have a case study today for a lady named Paula. I'm taking you through her continuum of care. Paula starts out needing just a little bit of help, but she's spending down her money. And as her medical issues progress, she needs more and more help. We're going to talk about how Medicaid benefits can potentially help her to preserve her money and make her money last longer and get her the care that she needs. I am going to talk about the donut hole today and how that works, some medical Medicaid programs, the long-term care programs for home and community-based services, and the institutional care program, your ICP, which is for your nursing home. We're also going to talk about pooled special needs trust and how those can help individuals qualify for these Medicaid programs when they are over the income and the asset limit. Who potentially needs Medicaid benefits? So everybody thinks of Medicaid as only for long-term care, nursing home residents primarily, sometimes assisted living. But there are also people who are living in their homes or sometimes in assisted living who need just help reducing their overall healthcare costs. There are programs for those people that reduce medication costs and just co-pays for going to the doctors and the hospitals. Again, of course, your nursing home and assisted living residents, people who can no longer work because of a disability. Somebody may have had an accident and now they can no longer work. They apply to Social Security and get put on disability benefits. Or perhaps they just have medical conditions that make it so they are no longer able to work. These Medicaid programs can help those people also. Your developmentally disabled adult population and even children can also be helped through Medicaid programs. So that's our population that we're talking about, but Medicaid can be very confusing. I talk to people and I say, are you on Medicaid? Well, yes, but they really don't know what type of Medicaid they're on. Lots of different flavors. Hopefully this will help to, shed light on some of those today. In Florida, you have to be, in order to get Medicaid, we are talking about today Medicaid for the aged and disabled. We are not talking about family Medicaid. So for this type, you have to be either 65 or older, or blind, or disabled. That's the Social Security definition of disabled. So if you're between the ages of 18 and 65, you're on Social Security disability benefits, whether it's SSI or SSDI, in order to even be able to qualify for Medicaid. Again, this type of Medicaid provides medical and long-term care expenses. Financial eligibility is based on income and assets. So just generally, I'm going to say that Medicaid does not count a house as long as the equity in the house is somewhere less than, I think it's around $688,000 now. So generally a house doesn't count, and if you're in a nursing home, as long as you have intent to return, it's not going to count as an asset towards Medicaid. Most of your income, all your income is going to count. U.S. citizens, like Social Security, pensions, that kind of thing. Now, VA aid and attendance is a little bit different when you go into a nursing home, etc. But we're not going to get too much into all of that today. U.S. citizenship is required, or you have to be a qualified non-citizen and a Florida resident. So Medicaid can vary from state to state and does vary from state to state. You have to have a social security number, and one of the rules on Medicaid is you have to file for all benefits. So you can't just say, well, I don't want to take this pension, etc. You have to apply for all benefits you're entitled to. So this is the chart and a financial eligibility chart. We're going to go through many of the programs on this chart today. You can see that they've changed the format on it. If you were used to it from the year before, the limits are for individuals. Like at the top, the ICP, the gross income limit for an individual is $2,742. For a couple, both needing the long-term care program, the limit is $5,484. The asset limit hasn't changed in a long time. Countable assets, $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple. Okay, so that's how you read this chart now. And we're going to go through. I have individual slides for the rest of this. By the way, the April chart just came out, and some of the numbers did change a little bit for some of the medical programs. So introducing you to Paula, who is 78 years old. She lives in a manufactured home and has 2 cats and a small dog. Her income every month, her gross income before any deductions, is $1,800. So she's getting her Medicare Part B taking out of that. So her net payment into her checking account every month is $1,635. She has checking and savings, which are countable assets, $15,000. And she does have some medical ailments, anxiety, diabetic, she's got early stage COPD, and she's got a heart condition. So Paula has a Medicare Advantage plan. She still is paying her Part B, but Paula's medications are costing her about $300 a month now. When she goes to the specialist, she has to pay $45. And most of these Advantage plans have out-of-pocket maximums. So she's exposing herself to potentially having medical expenses for a year of $6,000. When you're living on, a monthly income of $1,800 and you have minimal savings, that can be catastrophic for you. Paula's household expenses are $1,600 a month. That's, her mortgage, her utilities, her food, etc. So between her household expenses and her medical, she is going into the hole every month, and she's spending down for $15,000 in savings. So we're going to talk about some programs that might help Paula. I want to explain to you the Medicare donut hole for this year and the way that works. Because if you go into the coverage gap or the donut hole, your meds become even more expensive. Every year at the beginning of the year applies to prescription drugs for people on Medicare. There may be a deductible depending on what type of Medicare plan you have or traditional Medicare, up to $505. If you're in that deductible, if you're subject to a deductible, you're going to pay 100% of the cost of the drug. Then when you go into initial coverage, you're going to pay a small copay, hopefully, small copay, and the plan is going to pay the rest of the cost of the drug for you. When the total cost of the drug of all your drugs from January 1 on, reaches $4,660, you go into the gap. So that's what you've paid plus what the plan has paid, right? Total cost, $4,660, you're in the gap. When you're in the gap, you're going to pay a lot more. So your amount that you pay is going to go up, and the amount the plan pays goes down. this gap, these percentages that you see on the slide have changed every year, but right now it's at 25% of what you're paying. Now, to get out of the gap is a lot harder because only what you've spent counts. So once what you've spent reaches $7,400 for the year, now you go into what they call catastrophic coverage, and you're paying small copays again. So we want to keep people out of the gap so that they're not spending, so they're minimizing the amount of money they spend on medications. A lot of times when people say, yes, I'm on Medicaid, what they really mean is they have medically needy share of cost. They've applied to Medicaid, and Medicaid has come back and said, basically, this is the only program that you qualify for, because note, this program does not have an income limit. If your assets are less, countable assets are less than 5,000, you can make any amount of income and qualify for this program. But this is more like catastrophic insurance. You only get Medicaid under this program once your share of cost is met for the month. So your share of cost is your income less $180. So if you make $2,000 a month in income, your share of cost would be just a little bit over $1,800. Or in Paula's case, her share of cost, $1,800 less 180 is like $1,620. Okay, so that starts over every month. If Paula were on share of costs and she were to go into the ER room on the first of the month and incur a medical bill of, say, $5,000, her share of costs would kick in because now she's incurred a medical expense of more than $1,620. And Medicaid now is going to pay that entire bill. Now, if Paula had some prescription drugs, doctor's visits, etc., at the beginning of the month, she's going to have to pay for those. So then if she has an event where she goes to the ER room, maybe in the middle of the month, and now her medical expense is more than her share of costs, Medicaid now kicks in. So she didn't have Medicaid at the beginning until she incurred medical expenses equal to her share of costs. So it's a really difficult plan to work with. I had a client one time that was going to the ER room on the first every month. He had share of cost, and he, his income was right around what Paula's income is. And the ER room finally said, George, we know what you're doing. You don't have chest pains every month on the first. So, he was trying to meet his share of costs. So for the rest of the month, then he would have Medicaid and be able to go to the doctors and get his scripts and all. So we want to help people, qualify for a better program than this. One of the good things about this program now is, though, that you can get a dental plan once you meet your share of cost. Remember, it's just for the month, though. You have to start all over again the next month. Low-income subsidy is a fabulous program. If you have, and I believe these income limits just changed for April. We're not even in April yet, but they issued the chart. Low-income subsidy is help for Medicare prescription drug cost. It's going to keep you out of the donut hole. It's going to get your meds $0 to $10. Help with your Part D, that's your drug plan deductible and premium, and again, keep you out of the coverage gap. The way to qualify for that is if your income is less than $1,699 a month in your gross income, and your assets are less than $16,660. Okay, so if you have clients that meet that qualification, make sure they are on this program. It should be automatic if you have a Medicare and Medicaid or SSI. If not, call Social Security Administration. This program is actually managed through the Social Security Administration office, or you can apply online. I've given you the website. This is a really nice program. Now, let's talk about some programs that will cover more than just drug cost. These are called Medicare savings programs. You might have heard them called buy-ins. QMB, SLMB or SLMB, QI1, both have, additional benefits. Note though, the income limit is different than it was for the low income subsidy, okay? One of the great things about these plans is that you can change your Advantage plan or your prescription drug coverage every quarter. For the first 3 quarters of the year, and then you've got open enrollment in the last quarter. These programs are monitored and approved through DCF. I'm going to talk more about what each one has, what the benefits are. So QMB is a program that we at Aged try to help our clients get on when they're needing to reduce their medication and healthcare costs. This does not cover long-term care. It gives you the extra help for your prescription cost. So when you're on this program, your drug cost should be $0 to $10, okay? You're never gonna go into the donut hole. You're going to get your Medicare premium paid back in your Social Security check. The standard Part B premium is $164.90 every month, usually being deducted out of the Social Security check. Sometimes it's less than that because some of the Advantage plans actually pay for part of that, but that's the standard. So when you get qualified for QMB, your Social Security check is going to go up because they're no longer going to deduct the Part B premium cost from your check. Medicare deductibles are paid by Medicaid, and what's great about the QMB program is that it also covers that 20% that Medicare doesn't cover. So when you're on an Advantage plan, you have copays when you go to the specialist, when you go to have a test like an MRI, you have to pay a couple $100. Usually when you go to the hospital, again, that $6,000 out of pocket that Paula had in her plan, you're subject to all of that expense. When you're on QMB, you basically have Medicare and Medicaid is going to pick up all those copays. So you're really minimizing your exposure to your healthcare cost. The other Medicare savings programs with a higher limit for income are SLMB and QI1. The difference is these programs do not cover that 20%. So you still have to pay copays when you go to the doctors and the hospitals. However, it is going to give you the extra help to reduce your medication cost, and it's going to pay your Medicare Part B premium. Okay. So when we do our pooled trust for people, we're like, well, why are we just going to get them this benefit when we can get them the QMB that will give more benefits? Note that the QMB limit is less, $1,232. So a lot of people can't really qualify for that, but I'm going to give you a little technique to use that can potentially help people get qualified when their income's too much. Paula got the flu now, and she goes in the hospital for 6 days. Paula gets discharged back home, but her lungs have been compromised, and she is kind of depressed now too. They have given her additional medications, inhalers, now depression medication. She's on oxygen. and some blood thinners. So her medical costs are starting to add up. She's got the hospital bill. Now her meds are costing her $600 instead of $300 every month. And she's got co-pays for the specialist visits. So with her limited income and savings, is she going to take all the medicine that the doctor prescribes? Is she going to go for her follow-ups to the specialist? You know, is she going to be choosing between food, you know, or her health care? You know, is she going to feed her pets, all of that? So people are making choices every day on being able to afford their medications or their foods. I went to a lady's house one time that, you know, was referred, you know, I was told this lady, you know, needs some help. I get there and she says, oh, no, I really don't need that help. You know, I just don't take the medications that my doctor prescribed because I can't afford them, you know. So that's kind of sad. And she had a little bit of savings, didn't really want to do the trust right away. And 3 months later, she called and said she decided that she really was going to need the help. And we did help her until she passed away and was able to get the care that she really needed. So what does Paula do now? Her medical bills are adding up. You know, will share of cost help her? Low income subsidy, extra help. Yeah, that's going to be great. That's going to help with the medications. But would QMB be a better program for her to help with all those co-pays also? Well, yes, QMB would be great for Paula, but can she qualify because of her income and her assets? Okay, now we're going to take questions at the end again. So I'm going to talk to you now about a pooled special needs trust as a way to get Paula qualified for the QMB program. This is a type of special needs trust. I do another presentation to explain all the differences in these other types of special needs trusts, but the whole idea is that any monies you put into a special needs trust do not count for Medicaid purposes. So they all have different rules. With a pooled trust, you can put income and or assets into it. So you can be over the income limit or over the asset limit or both. You have to be disabled in order to use a pooled trust. And even if you're a senior, and really, you know, what that means is you have a lot of medical conditions that prevent you from working. Pooled trusts are managed by nonprofit organizations. That's one of the federal rules. The money in the trust can be used to pay for things that the government benefits don't pay for. So if Medicaid or Medicare is going to pay for it, why would, you know, we pay for it out of the client's funds? I'm not going to do that. There is a sole benefit rule also. So any monies that go into the trust for Paula have to be used for Paula. I can't buy things for the grandkids. In Florida, you're allowed to use a pooled trust of any age. Some states have age limitations. There's no limit on the amount that can go in. Upon death, there are special rules in the special needs trust. In Aged's trust, we can either retain 100% of the money, or what's not retained is paid back to Medicaid and then goes to heirs, if there's enough money to pay the heirs. So that's kind of a summary of really what I just said. Again, to be disabled, if you're under 65, you're going to be on SSI or SSDI to use the trust. If you're 65 or older, you have to provide medical records and to DCF when the application is submitted, and a medical review team will review those records to ensure that you meet that definition of not being able to work. So someone's just turning like, 68 and going on Medicare and they, oh, it'd be nice to have the Medicaid to go with it. If they're still working or something like that, I'm not going to be able to help them. It becomes a little bit more challenging also with married couples because the chart counts the married, the couple income. And so sometimes it's harder to get somebody qualified because of that. There's about 10 pooled trust companies around the state of Florida. Aged is in the Central Florida area. And, we started out as a pooled trust company back 20 years ago. We now manage all types of special needs trust. Again, we pay for things the government benefits don't pay for. Okay, so we have to make sure we're following federal code, Social Security code, and a lot of people say to me, this sounds too good to be true. So I like to provide you with the Medicaid guidelines. This is right out of the Medicaid procedure manual, showing that a Medicaid pooled trust for disabled individuals is a legal instrument that meets the criteria in the U.S. Code and allows disabled individuals to place assets and/or income into a trust to qualify for Medicaid. And there's the link to the manual. When you're looking to do a pooled trust, there is a concept of a master trust that's already done, and this is true for every pooled trust company. There's already a master trust with all the legal language. In order to create an account for someone, there's a joiner agreement that gets filled out. Joiner agreement and a fee agreement and are the legal documents. Obviously you have to provide proof of income. There can be an advocate named. If you are a guardian, you have to have a court order in order to fund and establish the pooled trust. So we have a sample petition, but basically as a guardian, you want to do a pooled trust, you fill out the joiner, don't sign it, submit it with your petition to the court. Once the court approves you establishing the trust and funding it, then you can, sign the trust and get everything done. Once the trust is funded, Aged, of course, the trust company has to accept the documents, and then you can provide everything to DCF or whoever's helping with the Medicaid application. We do ask you to be careful if the individual has, substantial assets. We want to make sure that the individual understands what they're doing or their legal representative. So we want people to consult with an attorney before they're putting, lump sums of, money into the trust. Usually it's cash. So make sure they understand what all their options are. In Paula's case, remember, Paula's got $1,800 in income every month, $15,000 in assets. That's in her bank. Now, if she does a pooled trust, she's going to need to get QMB. She's going to need to put $600 every month into the trust because that's her income that she's over. She's over the QMB limit by about $600. She's also over the asset limit by about $8,000. So in order to fund the trust, it's $600 every month and $8,000 up front. With the money in the trust, we use it to pay things for Paula. We can pay her rent, her utility bills, her cell phone bill, all sorts of different things that can be paid out of the pooled trust. Now, if somebody is on SSI, we do have some restrictions on those with those clients. So Paula is going to establish a pooled trust. And she's going to transfer every month $600 into the trust to reduce her accountable income down to $1,200. She deposits $8,000 to initially meet the resource requirements. and the trust is going to pay her bills. So what does this do for Paula? Her Social Security check is going to go up by $165 because her Part B premium is now covered by Medicaid. Typically, this is enough to cover the trustee fee. Okay, so a lot of times people say, well, how can people afford the trust? This is how they can afford it because now their Part B is going to be paid for them. Medication costs are reduced. She's not paying more than $10 for any of her medications. So now her cost is $100 a month instead of $600. She's saving $500 a month. So now she can afford her meds. Her co-pays are zero. She can go to the pulmonologist, the cardiologist, all the specialists for the testing and everything, and she pays nothing. When you're on QMB and you go see a doctor, they are not allowed to charge you a copay. Okay, so Paula can now afford, the food. She can feed her cats and dogs, and she can get the health care she needs. So we've helped Paula a lot. But now Paula falls. She has had a stroke and fell and was on the floor all night. Her friend came to check on her for church. Well, the friend called 911 and Paula was taken to the hospital. She had fractured her hip and now she had some cognitive issues going on. And they decided to discharge her to rehab after 10 days in the hospital. So she's getting her rehab. Now the question is, can Paula go home? Is she going to need, what kind of care is she going to need? Is she going to need skilled nursing, assisted living, maybe help at home? Thank goodness Paula had her QMB, because if she didn't, she could be paying up to $200 a day for the, days 21 through 100 with the Medicare. So good thing that Paula had the QMB. So I want to talk about some of the long-term care programs, and then we'll talk about what Paula is going to do. Home and community-based services waivers. All of these programs are under that category. The one that most of us are used to is the statewide managed care, long-term care, okay? That's your wait list. I'm going to talk about a little bit for services at home or in the ALF. The ICP institutional care program is your nursing home Medicaid, and then there's hospice also has a long-term care program. The whole point in the HCBS program is that, the government said, we're going to try to reduce the amount of people that need to go into the institutions and to provide services when they're in their home or in the community. The problem is it's not funded fully, and there's a wait list. Last time I knew there was over 60,000 people on the wait list. We just had a presentation at another meeting I went to yesterday from the Senior Resource Alliance here in Orlando that manages this program. And he told us that 200 people were released from the wait list last month. That was good. But, there's lots and lots more people waiting to get these services. So if you think somebody needs help in the home, okay, or to help pay for assisted living, there's a process to get them on this waiting list. And you can go through your local area agency on aging. There's a website in my materials at the end to find your local area agency on aging, or call the Department of Elder Affairs helpline to initiate the call. In order to qualify for this, you have to meet nursing home level of care. So there has to be need. You have, the activities of daily living. They need to have help with those types of things. You must be aged, blind, or disabled. Benefits at home and in assisted living. And what we do sometimes is when people are on the waiting list or needing the wait list, we get them qualified for the medical Medicaid, like the QMB, and to reduce their out-of-pocket while they're on the wait list. And hopefully they will get off the wait list. So this is how it works. When you make the call, they'll schedule a time to call back for an interview. It's usually about a 45-minute interview, and the person is getting a priority score. They're supposed to send that to you in the mail. If you get a 5, that's the highest score, then you're the highest priority on the wait list. Pretty much if you don't get a 5, it's going to be really hard to get off the waiting list. And now you wait until you get the call or the letter that says, hey, we have funds available for you. We have a spot available for you. At that time, that's when you're going to do your Medicaid application. That's when you have to financially apply. Is after they call you and say you're off the wait list. Just note, if there's a significant change in circumstances, call the area agency on aging and request a reassessment. Now, you can't do this every month, but just know, once you get on, if things start to decline, get a lot worse, or there's some kind of emergency, you can call and ask for a reassessment. Once you're released from the wait list, there's forms that need to be filled out from the medical standpoint, the 3008, and there's a CARES assessment. That's the medical piece of it. And now the financial eligibility determination. So a lot happens in our poor, seniors, and they get very confused sometimes at this point, and they really need our professional help to guide them on what's needed. Now, ICP is different. Skilled nursing, there's no waiting list for skilled nursing, to qualify for skilled nursing. Basically, again, you're meeting medical criteria and financial criteria. My little bullet point there on asset transfers, you don't want to give away money, because if you've given away money within the last 5 years, they're going to penalize you and they're going to delay your Medicaid. It does not, you should still apply though, because the clock starts ticking when you apply. So if you've given away $30,000 last year, they're going to delay your Medicaid 3 months, because they're going to divide that by 10,809. Okay, that's a little complicated, but even if the person's given away money, it doesn't mean they can't eventually get the Medicaid. There's something called spousal allowance if someone's married and one is still in the community. So if my spouse needs to go into nursing home and I'm still in the community, then I'm allowed to, get or have more assets than the $2,000. Okay. When you go into a nursing home, you have to pay what they call patient responsibility to the facility. It's your income less $130 when you're on Medicaid. You get to keep $130 for your personal needs. Now, some people don't realize that you can deduct from your patient responsibility for unreimbursed medical expenses, like health and dental plan premiums. Some people that go on Medicaid want to keep their dental plan or their, supplemental plan or something like that. And that is allowed. Whether it's necessary or not is a whole nother discussion. Hearing and vision supplies, therapy services, etc. So if you have some kind of or nursing facility bill from the prior 3 months, So if you have medical bills that haven't been paid and you're applying for ICP, submit those to DCF, because they will come back and say, okay, instead of having to give, $1,600 to the nursing home, you only have to give $1,400, because now you're paying $200 in medical expenses for past medical expenses. Okay. Most, if not all, medication and supplies are paid for when you're on this Medicaid program. So you really shouldn't have to be paying for much, if anything, in the nursing home when you're on the Medicaid. When you get long-term care Medicaid, because it is managed care, you're going to have to pick a plan to provide those long-term care services. There's, MMAs cover the medical piece, long-term care covers the long-term care, but now a lot of them are called comprehensive plans. And there's also dental plans. So just know that. I don't have enough time to talk a lot about those today, but just know that the client's going to have to, or you are going to have to pick a plan for the client. There are some specialty plans. You're still going to keep your Medicare though. These are going to provide these types of benefits. The plans will provide these long-term care benefits. If you're on the long-term care program for assisted living, generally the long-term care plan is going to pay $1,000 to $1,400 towards the care at the facility, depending on the facility's contract. Now, remember, facilities have to contract with Medicaid. Not all of the assisted livings take Medicaid, long-term care Medicaid, right? So you have to check if your client has limited income, limited resources. You're going to have to check to see, does the facility take the Medicaid? Again, facility may charge $4,000 for an assisted. If the Medicaid's going to pay $1,000, you have to come up with $3,000 a month. It's not like nursing home. It's different. These are just some benefits that the medical plan provides, and the dental plan, it's still limited, unfortunately. It's Medicaid. So, alrighty. So, what's the limit for the long-term care programs, both for skilled nursing and the waiver program? $2,742 in countable income. For an individual, but you're still only allowed to have $2,000 in countable assets. Okay. Again, your personal needs allowance is $130. I mentioned earlier that if you're married, the government doesn't really want the community spouse to be impoverished. So they have formulas to calculate. Sometimes income can be diverted to the community spouse. So let's say husband goes into nursing home and he has $5,000 a month in income, and the spouse remaining in the house has $1,000. There's a way to submit information to DCF, have them calculate a transfer of income over to that community spouse. Okay, and the community spouse is allowed to have $148,620 in their own assets. And remember, married couples can, move money around and stuff. I'm not an attorney, and please, nothing in this presentation is considered to be legal advice. So always consult with an attorney when you're doing stuff like this. There is more information in the SSI related Medicaid fact sheet. This is actually a little booklet type of thing. That has some good information in it. So there's a link for you there. And this asset transfer divisor, that's for your gifting. Okay. So what will Paula do? Can Paula go back home? Let's get her qualified, or does she need to go on wait list for home and community base? Well, her money's running out. So let's get her on ICP, Medicaid, and the skilled nursing. She still has $6,000 though. What she's going to do, remember she has a pooled trust though. So she's going to put she's going to add $5,000 into the trust. This gets her countable assets below $2,000 now, right? Paula now owes the SNF $1,670 a month. That's her patient responsibility. She's going to now have the trust. She's going to have the trust pull that whole amount in every month, and the trust is going to pay the skilled nursing facility. Okay, she chooses a comprehensive plan. She still has her Medicare. And she really doesn't need QMB on that time. So basically she's reporting a change to DCF, and she's going from QMB to ICP, Medicaid. But oh my goodness, Paula gets better. After 60 days on Medicaid in a nursing home, you are allowed to transition to back home or assisted living. So Paula got better. She can now thrive in assisted living environment. So Paula gets to keep her Medicaid by doing this. She can transition from nursing to ALF and keep her Medicaid because she's been on Medicaid for 60 days in the SNF. Her program is going to change. So again, this is reporting a change. And she's now going to get the home and community-based services program that's going to pay, in this example, $1,100 towards her assisted living facility. She found a facility that would only charge $2,800. She's got to come up with $1,700, right, to pay the facility the full amount. Her medical coverage basically is the same as when she was in a SNF. Her comprehensive plan is going to cover all of her medical expenses. Then remember, Paula still has a manufactured home. She sold the home and the proceeds were placed in the full trust. So what did we do for Paula? She started at home. She was spending down her money because she had no Medicaid. We got her the pooled trust, got her the QMB to reduce her out-of-pocket medical costs. Then she went into rehab, couldn't go back home. We got her on the skilled nurse, the ICP program and skilled nursing. Then she was able to transition to assisted living. Again, no wait list because she went to the ICP first and then to assisted living. So by getting the Medicaid and using the pooled trust, Paula got better medical care. That's improving her health. Her money lasted longer and her quality of life was enhanced. So this really does happen a lot. And, you know, you need to understand that Medicaid, you know, can really help a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that need that kind of help to make their assets last longer and get the health care that they need. These are the programs that we've talked about today. We do have about 10 minutes left. And I do have resources, links to the DCF. You know, this is applying for benefits, their policy manual, more about the managed care program, the different fact sheets. If you have a client that's on QMB and the doctor starts sending them bills, here's your balance billing rules that you can just send to the doctor and say, hey, sorry, you're not allowed to balance bill my client. Here's your disability things, and the Medicare and You official handbook comes out every year. You can get that right online. You need an attorney. Hopefully you know some attorneys in your area. The elder law attorneys are the ones that really understand the Medicaid programs. You can find a list there at the Othello website. And AGID has a rapid resource directory also that can be used. We have a whole list of guardians, attorneys, facilities, etc. on our website. Please use this as a resource. We like to help people. We can brainstorm with you, talk through. Can't always help, but a lot of times we can. Here's our website. And again, in about a week, you're going to be getting, a link with a certificate of attendance. If you need to self-report, you can do that, and then view the website also. And with that link that you get, we will also provide the PDF document for you, so you have this, for reference. All right, well, I am going to first go into the chat. I'm gonna leave this up for a minute. Let's see what kind of. Okay, let's see. Well, I see some thank yous in there and some good mornings, but I don't see any questions. So, Kate, can you open up and allow people to unmute themselves? And
yep, I changed the settings.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions? Here's a question in the chat. Can you give an example of what you would pay off if there is money left over in the trust? So when someone passes away, we look to what the joiner agreement says. I think this is the question, is after death. So the rule is, well, in AGID's full trust, you can name heirs, but Medicaid has to be paid back first. So we write to Medicaid and say, how much did you spend, Medicaid, on this person? While they have the trust, pretty much it's how they calculate it. So they write us a lien letter back. Let's say there's a $30,000 lien and there's $20,000 in the trust. AGID retains 10%. That's $3,000. We're going to pay back Medicaid the $20,000, and now we have $7,000 to split among the heirs. Let's say the Medicaid lien came back $100,000. There's not enough to pay Medicaid back in the trust. I mean, there's not enough money because there's only $20,000 in the trust, right? I'm sorry, there's $30,000 in my example. AGID is going to retain the entire amount in the trust. The heirs are not harmed, and we do not pay a partial lien back to Medicaid. That's how most of the pool trusts work. We cannot pay anything after death. So it's important when you're using a trust to get your prepaid burial plans done, get your guardianship fees in. Sometimes we prepay the guardians, for final expenses and things like that. That's kind of up to you and your attorney if you want to do that. Or not. But the trust rules do not allow the trustee to pay anything after death. Okay. Yes, we are sending out the PowerPoint and the certificates. I have a client who's in an ALF. Her rent is $1,200 a month, but a DCF notice indicates she needs to be paying $1,730 to her facility. What should I do? Yeah, so I would work with the facility to try to figure out what's going on there. Sometimes it's, hard to get the calculation from DCF, not that you couldn't ask. You can also always request a hearing if you disagree with what DCF is telling you. I can't really say specifically why that they're saying that. It doesn't really make a lot of sense that they're saying she owes more than what the facility is, her rent is, but maybe it's because of her income, you know. But I think basically you're going to have to work with the facility and try to work with DCF if you can.
Sharon, there's two more questions under the first one.
Oh, did I miss a couple questions?
Yeah, if you scroll up in the chat, there's some questions.
Okay. Okay. All righty. Is there an asset limit to qualify for a pool trust with regard to applying for Medicaid? So it's all about what Medicaid program are you trying to apply for and what is your income and your assets. The amount that you have to put into a pool trust is whatever you're over the limits. So if you're there's no limit on the amount that can go in. So we get attorneys from around the state of Florida that are doing Medicaid planning for somebody going into a nursing home, and that person may have $100,000 left, or they may have 50,000 or whatever. 100,000 can go into the pool trust. You know, I have people say, "Oh, can you put $1 million in?" You could, but that's really not what the trust is used for typically. Although they can be used for personal injury settlements also. There's no limits though. The whole point is you're trying to put enough in to get down below the Medicaid limits. And there's no minimum with aged. So we do a lot of income only trust. You know, there's no assets in there where the income will come in. And we take a fee and then we can pay it out in expenses. So some of our accounts every month go down to close to zero. And then the income comes in, we pay the bills, you know, and goes down. Income comes in, we pay the bills, and now we're back at, you know, $5, whatever. Not all maybe trust companies will do that, but aged will. We do have a minimum fee. We have a couple discounted programs depending on the situation. Our minimum fee is $115 a month for a normal account like that. Under certain circumstances, we reduce that down to $60. Okay, I did the ALF one. I didn't sign up. Can I email you so you can get a copy of the PowerPoint? Sure, that's fine. Rose. Oops, I forgot to put my do not disturb on. I'm sorry about that. For someone on SSI, for someone on SSI under 65, they can have a trust for the income to be deposited and pay regular bills then. So when you're on SSI, your SSI needs to go into your checking account. I'm not going to put it in the trust. Sometimes you might be working a little bit or something like that. That money could go into the trust. So we cannot pay out of a pool trust. Someone on SSI, we don't want to pay for food or housing because that will, that's what SSI is supposed to cover. It can reduce their SSI either at 100% or up to 1/3, depending on how much SSI they get. So we can pay other bills like cell phone bills. We can pay cable bills for people on SSI. But if we pay rent, it's going to reduce their SSI by at least 1/3. I hope that answered that question. Okay. So we're at our time now, and I really do appreciate everybody on the webinar today. Hope it was great information. And please feel free to email or give us a call if you have any questions. Thanks again.